Is Tuesday, September 20th, 2022, 7 p.m. Central Time on the dot, which means it is time for a Blogging the Boys roundtable. You can watch us live on the Blogging the Boys YouTube channel. You can also catch the rewatch if you're lazy and caught up with work or life or whatever. You can listen to us on the Blogging the Boys podcast network. My name is Ochoa, and I say us because I am joined by a cast of quite the characters. We'll go in clockwise order as we usually do. Top middle, the 12 o'clock position. You can catch him on Friday nights refereeing high school football and then hitting the local tavern and singing karaoke. Shania Twain's Man, I Feel Like a Woman is his go-to. Tony Catalina, thank you for joining us here tonight. Paul Stewart off on the top right corner. You can hear him. You can hear and see these guys all over Blogging the Boys if it isn't obvious. You can hear Paul every Saturday on the World's team. He is, in fact, a citizen of the world. I think Paul has more stamps in his passport than any of us combined. So, Paul, thank you for being here tonight. Danny Phantom, the bottom right corner of your screen, the top left corner of the country. He does not like cheese, he told us in the chat. Dan refuses to eat cheese on any kind of food. So, go figure there. The 6 o'clock position is held by David Howman. He of Blogging the Boys fame, one of the more astute writers around here. Howman, thank you for gracing us with your presence. Finally, bottom left quadrant, even though there are 6 of us here, the real Mark Lane is where you can find him on Twitter. Mark, where do you think the fake Mark Lane hangs out?
There's one in Daytona Beach. There was also one that wrote a JFK conspiracy book entitled Rush to Judgment. So that's why I have to establish my dominance as the real Mark Lane.
Right. Well, none of us will be rushing to judgment about Dak Prescott and Cooper Rush and all that. All the puns kind of write themselves when it comes to the Dallas Cowboys winning a game with Cooper Rush. Dan, they did it. The Cowboys did it. We have a lot to get to tonight. We will have a BTB Roundtable champion, of course, as we always do. But Cooper Rush, he shocked the world. Did you think it could happen, Danny Phantom?
Oh, yeah. I thought it could happen. I mean, Cowboys are a good team. I really wasn't freaking out after the week 1 loss. I think there's a lot of good things about this team. So, I mean, I wasn't expecting them to win, but I'm certainly not surprised that they did. So, yeah, I mean, to me, it's like I feel like everything seems normal. Nothing is askew to me. So, yeah.
Paul, do you think Danny's lying? Like, is the Cowboys fan out there who really thought that they could knock off the Cincinnati Bengals without Dak Prescott the way that they did?
Yeah, I mean, when you look in the history, say like.
So you're a liar too, Paul. Interesting. Okay.
Hey, come on, man. No, like when you look back and see what Cooper Rush did against the Minnesota Vikings last year, I mean, why not? Like, how could you not feel like he's now 2 for 2 now? So, I mean, he played really well. So, I mean, I can understand where some fans was like having that being laid, like, wasn't too sure that we've lost that Prescott, we've got Cooper Rush. The odds are not necessarily going to be in our favor, but we can still have enough to beat the Bengals. So, yeah, pretty much I'm on with them on that one.
Alman, you are somebody who, like me, believes in attributing some credit to Mike McCarthy. That's a bit of an unpopular thing to do within the confines of Cowboys Nation. Would you say that was his finest hour, especially given the stakes that were surrounding him with the season kind of falling apart in week 2 already?
I don't know if I'd necessarily go that far in saying it's his finest hour, but it was definitely one of his better ones, especially after just how bad the team looked all around last week against the Buccaneers. To come out and do this against a team that was in the Super Bowl just last year, and to do it the way that they did, coming out strong, and then in the second half when the Bengals started coming back, they didn't wilt away, they didn't fade under the pressure, they kept it together. Trayvon Diggs came up, made a clutch tackle on 3rd down. Cooper Rush got them in field goal range, and then Brett Maher, the prodigal son of the Dallas Cowboys, comes up and saves the day, just as we all knew he would. It really just felt like everything that, last week, everything went wrong for the Cowboys. This week, everything went right, and was just a really big moment, really needed moment for Mike McCarthy.
Tony, we're about to get started with the actual roundtable topic, so points are now up for grabs. First of all, my baseball team won their division. Yours did not. Ha ha to you, Tony Catalina. But the actual first question for tonight, kind of piggybacking off of what I just asked Howman, but who do we give the most credit to? for Sunday's win? We're going to go around the horn here. You can copy each other. It's worth mentioning that if you prove somebody else to be wrong, maybe you steal their points. I don't know. But Tony Catalina, who do you give the most credit to for Sunday's Dallas Cowboys win over the Cincinnati Bengals?
I feel like it's an easy answer. I'm leaning towards Dan Quinn. I think the way he prepared that defense to come out there and, put together 2 back-to-back good games against 2 quality offenses. I think they used Micah Parsons in a way that we've always envisioned and hoped that they would. Now he's sitting here after 2 weeks with 4 sacks, leading the league in sacks, and I think they felt good about that matchup with him and Lyle Collins. So I if I could give it to the whole defensive unit, I would, but they understood the assignment, knowing what it's going to take to kind of put this offense and this team on their back. And Joe Burrow and them coming off of a bad week themselves, I was of the mind thinking that Joe Burrow was going to find a way to get right. I thought him and Jamar Chase were going to be able to exploit not Trayvon Diggs, but I just didn't think that they were going to have back-to-back good bad weeks. And so all my credit goes to Dan Quinn and that defensive unit.
Mark Lane, do you have a non-Dan Quinn answer? If so, who is it? If not, why is it Dan Quinn?
I think John Fossil, because the way that the special teams unit played against the Bengals, you had Brian Anger had 4 punts inside the 20-yard line. You had Kevontae Turpin with the 20-yard return. They were running some punt block, not just to try to block punts, but to also, get the punter a little anxious, that would provide some of the returns for Turpin. They did a great job on kickoff return, and they really used the transition phase of the game to set up at the end the game-winning field goal. Also, you got to give credit to Brett Maher for hitting some clutch kicks, for not looking like his 2019 self. So I think John Fossil deserves some of the credit for the win over the Bengals.
Got to be honest. Didn't see John Fossil coming up, and I kind of thought it was a joke. But, Mark, you made a compelling case. Danny Phantom, who gets the most credit for Sunday's win in your book?
Well, I am going to piggyback a little bit off Tony, but I'm going to go more specific, and I'm going to give it to AD because I think the defensive line played outstanding. I really think that, those guys were rushing basically just 4 guys a lot of times, and they were basically, forcing Burrow to beat them with 7 defenders back there. So I just think that, you look at every single with Micah Parsons, Dorrance Armstrong, and Dante Fowler. Just everybody was just coming at him. So just a fantastic job coaching on the defensive line. So I'm going with Aiden on that one.
Okay, that's fair. All right, we have 3 different answers. David Howman, can you give us a 4th?
I sure can, and it's going to be a controversial.
By the way, David Howman picked up 10 points for wearing a Blog on the Boys T-shirt. By the way, for the podcast audience, so shout out to Howman for representing. But Howman, I'm sorry, continue.
I'm gonna go ahead and give the most credit to Kellen Moore. Last week, everybody was very critical of Kellen. Even Mike McCarthy said in his press conference he's got to be smarter. Well, he did exactly that. He came out. He was smarter with the play calls. He had a very specific attack for not only to take advantage of this Bengals defense, but also to get Cooper Rush in a good rhythm. They stuck to their run game, which, is what they're built to do now. They spent all offseason trying to build themselves into more of a run-heavy team. They were able to stick to their run game. They didn't get cute with trick plays that went nowhere. They put Cooper Rush in situations where he had really good passing lanes. He, had chemistry with Noah Brown, and they kept going back to him. And it was just night and day in terms of the game that he called from last week to this week. He emphasized all the strengths of this roster on the offense, the few that they have right now, and he helped negate the strengths of the Bengals, which is their interior defensive line that's been so disruptive. And they were able to when they wanted to run up the middle, they did it. They mostly ran out to the edges, and they had a lot of success with it.
Howman, there are a few comments that I want to throw up to you specifically because they're about you and your highly controversial answer. Johnny Boy says minus 100 points. You only had 10. So, not mathematically possible. Frederick does chime in and says, what, minus points? JL Channel says Kellen Moore went conservative in the second half, though. And Ron Dedon says that they like your answer, but Kellen Moore didn't win this game compared to last week, but he did win for sure. I do agree with the spirit of these comments. Do you it kind of, and even with the point you made, it kind of sounds like Kellen's great job was kind of staying out of the way and letting everybody else shine. Do you think that's fair? Because I kind of agree with everybody else a little bit more than I do with you.
Well, I mean, your job as an offensive coordinator is to put your players in the best position to succeed. So when you're down your starting quarterback, you've got a rookie at left tackle who hasn't played it since almost a year ago, and you've got a starter at left guard making his first career start. Receiver position is kind of a mess outside of CeeDee Lamb. There's really only so much you can do. I hear the criticism that they went conservative and they didn't score another touchdown after those first 2 drives. But keeping in mind, this offense really is not constructed to be the team 40 burger that they have been the last couple of years. So I don't think that it's really realistic to see, scoring every drive or scoring touchdowns every quarter. And that's just really falls back on the front office for how they built this offense, or rather how they took it apart in the offseason. I look at the job that Kellen did on Sunday against the Bengals, and I say he did what he had to do to get these guys to be successful.
Okay. 4 people, 4 different answers, including one defense of an answer. It's early here on the roundtable. Paul, do you have a 5th answer, or are you going to copy one of these people?
I have a different one. And
okay, all right. Everybody picked up a point for creativity. Okay.
Yes, so I am going to go with the offensive line and Joe Philbin. So the reason why I'm saying that is because that is without a doubt one of the best performances we've seen under the Joe Philbin era. Tyler Biadasz was phenomenal. That was without a doubt his best game, I thought. His block on Eli Apple to open the gap for Tony Pollard for that 47-yard gain was absolutely outstanding. If you go back and watch the video, it's just absolutely takes him out to the sideline. It's beautiful. You've also got Zach Martin on the 1-yard line for the actual touchdown, completely decimating DJ Reader down to the ground. That was just sublime. So with that, and even with the pass protection as well, Tyler Smith under 39 snaps, I think he only gave up 1 pressure, and just as a whole, there was only 1 sack and 4 tackles for losses. So, and the most important thing of all, 0 penalties. So,
I gotta say, you all shocked me. I'm a little speechless. I mean, this is a well done effort by all you guys. Congratulations. Well done early. Tony, what does it say that we went through the entire roundtable? You guys had 5 different answers, and that nobody's answer to the question, which was, who do you give the most credit to Sunday's win to? Nobody answered a player. Nobody picked Micah Parsons. I don't think anybody would have picked Cooper Rush, but there wasn't an obvious player. You all made very strong cases for different members of the staff, but I mean, is that a good thing? Is that I think the positive side is oh, it's a team. Yeah, team game, team win, whatever. But there is a negative, there was no real bright shining force of a player. And that's kind of a problem in this particular game.
Well, I wonder if we just come to expect what Micah Parsons does for himself. I think for him to go out and get 2 sacks is almost like chalk at this point. But at the same time, I think when you lose your starting quarterback and he's out for X amount of games, it doesn't matter if it's 1, 5, 6, whatever it is. It's a full team effort. I think everybody had to, kind of pull themselves up, and they had to rally around Cooper Rush. And I think we did touch on every single unit, right? We had defense, offense, special teams. So it really was a full team effort to go out there and beat a quality Bengals football team.
By the way, Paul, Zachary awarded you 5 points for the dope dialect. You incorporated the word sublime. I don't think anybody's ever done that here on the roundtable, but we don't practice Santeria either. So Dan, I saw you pump your fist when Paul gave credit and gave flowers to Joe Philbin. This takes us into our next topic. This might be the most controversial. I've seen just about all of you offer a take on Twitter about this. Jerry Jones was on 105.3 The Fan on Tuesday. He confused Noah Brown for Cedric Wilson, who hasn't been there. But he also included a very, very popular phrase when it comes to the Cowboys, and that is position flex. So, Dan, I start with you because Jerry said this about Jason Peters. What should the Cowboys do with him when he's ready? We don't know when that's going to be. Jerry did intimate that it won't be next Monday night against the Giants. But Jason Peters, the options are seemingly left tackle, left guard, right tackle. So what do you do with Jason Peters, Danny Phantom, and why?
Well, I think it's either left tackle or right tackle, depending on which one of those guys gets hurt first. So I think he's your swing tackle. I think that Jason Peters should not be starting for the Cowboys. And I want to start off.
Whoa. Okay. All right. Okay. Let's go. Go for it. I'm sorry, Danny. I'm just excited. You guys were all like nice and peaceful in the first answer. I'm ready to see some fireworks.
Is this that bold of a claim to say this? But I mean, first off, I owe the front office an apology for questioning their assessment of the offensive line. And Tyler Smith has been fantastic. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, I watched a lot of tape on him in the preseason at guard, and he didn't look very good. So, I mean, my worries, I feel, were valid then. But I've also watched a lot of tape of these last two games, and I am very impressed with him. And you know what I think of Terrence Steele. So, I mean, those guys, to me, I don't mess with it. It's working. Don't mess with it. Here's the thing with Jason Peters. He gets hurt. You know, he has just as much availability as Tyron Smith has over the last several years. So just like, you know, use him if you need him when he's fresh. Maybe it's down the stretch or something. Don't stick him in there and expect him to play 15 plus games or whatever and not be hurt. So no, it's working. I mean, we're going to get McGovern back, you know, maybe after the week after next. Then the left guard situation's fine. Let the offensive line kind of just develop some cohesiveness. Don't mess with it. You know, I was wrong. It's not as bad as I thought. They're good. Let them be.
Dan, just like we did with Howman, the commenters have had some thoughts on your take. Johnny Boy RN said left tackle 3 times and stopped the silliness. Ron the Don said, whoa, like I did. Zachary does think this is a hot take, so I wasn't the only one in that sense. And Ron the Don is accusing you of sipping the Kool-Aid. We can kind of talk about this, like, you know, kind of feeling a little bit good about the way things are going right now. And I would kick Mark. I'll kick it to you with this. Johnny Boy RN says, stop it, Danny. Luck is not validation on the mess they made. Farniok is a liability at left guard. Peters goes to left tackle. Mark, I'm personally of the mindset Jason Peters left tackle, puts Tyler Smith at left guard. You make 2 positions a lot more comfortable than they kind of are right now. And no offense to Tyler Smith, the left tackle, but Mark, you always think about things in a very interesting way. What would you do with Jason Peters, who you know cover the Arkansas Razorbacks as well, so you know his alma mater very well?
It's an interesting situation because Tyler Smith is playing real well. I don't think that Terrence Steele is ever going to play bad enough that they're going to necessitate putting Jason Peters out there. I think a lot of what has happened is that Jerry Jones has just let fans in on the conversation that Will McClay, Joe Philbin, Mike McCarthy had, and, you know, Stephen and Jerry had when they were bringing Peters in. Because one of the things that Mike McCarthy actually got credit for in 2020 when they were undergoing all those changes on the offensive line due to injury was, one time he started all 5 guards in a game. And I also know that James Campen, who was the offensive line coach with the Packers throughout McCarthy's reign in Green Bay, he puts an emphasis on position flex as well. So I think a lot of this is just really a conversation, a brainstorming session about what they could do with Jason Peters. I don't think any of these things are concrete. If anything, if Tyler Smith starts to look a little Chaz Green, then they'll kick Jason Peters out there. And then I think a lot of the brainstorming of, well, what can we do with Jason Peters came in December when Tyron Smith supposedly gets back. So I think Jason Peters is just going to be the left tackle, and all this talk of moving him inside the guard or kicking him out to right tackle is just from a brainstorming session that the Brain Trust had when acquiring him.
Okay, so Mark, you're ultimately then left tackle, right? That's where you're planting your flag for Jason Peters.
Left tackle right. Yes, left tackle right.
Tony Catalina, you were the person here, at least, who posited, and you tweeted about this, throwing out the idea of Jason Peters playing at right tackle. You hate Terrence Steele more than anybody else in the world. So has your opinion changed, Tony? Where would you like to play Jason Peters, and why?
I fundamentally presented this as something that I was trying to read through the words of what Jerry Jones said. I don't think Jason Peters at right tackle is the answer. I don't necessarily think Terrence Steele needs to be replaced. I'm just simply laying out the fact that this wasn't even a thought until Jerry Jones mentioned it on the radio. We brought him in to play left tackle, if either swing or start, and that was the only thing that's ever been discussed and debated on any of these networks or any of these shows. The fact that he said he got the flexibility, to me, coming off of Steele's performance of 4 penalties and the offensive line didn't look great in that first game, it just stemmed off of, maybe like Mark said, him just brainstorming out loud what they've discussed or how they can kind of attack it. I am of the mind that I think Tyler Smith is shown us some positive things. I think we know who our left tackle of the future is. I know it's Tyler Smith. But right now, they set him up to be the left guard of this football team for 2022. You didn't bring Jason Peters in to be an assistant offensive line coach like I tweeted to Dan. Like, I think Jason Peters, we know what the floor is. If we think this is the floor with Matt Farniok, the third left guard out there, and we think this is functional and it's working, then what can Jason Peters kicking outside with his age and his stability and Tyler Smith showing us some positive things on left guard? It could solidify the left side. And guess what? If Jason Peters isn't playing well and it isn't something that we love, we already know that there's a combination that worked. It's early enough in the season to try to get that to work. So I don't think we have to stick to this. I don't think anybody loved Connor McGovern at left guard. I don't know if anybody's loved Matt Farniok at left guard, but I think we like the idea of Tyler Smith there because of how he's played so far.
Okay, so then your team left tackle, just to get down to the brass tacks,
yep.
Right? And
Definitely.
But you're also team like, I'm not married to that, right? You just want to date Jason Peters at left tackle.
Yeah, I don't need to marry him.
Okay, you're a married man, happily so. I mean, why would you? I mean, hey, good for you, Tony Catalina. Great night for you. Paul, there does my own personal reading, Dan, this isn't a shot at you, but I think there's a lot of people who are like, the first 2 games have gone well, so why mess with a good thing? It's 2 games. It's 2 games, Paul, against, 50 years that Jason Peters has been playing left tackle in the NFL, it feels like. But you were nodding along in agreement with Danny. So do you think that Jason Peters should now be relegated to swing tackle? Whatever he signed up to be damned?
I would play Jason Peters at his strength if he was to be put in. Like, I totally agree with the whole continuity side of things. Like, if it's not broken, then why change it? Like, right as of right now, because right now Smith is doing a really exceptional job at that position, and he's going to be the future left tackle in the future when Tyron's retired or whatever in that. So, and for likes of there was the comment about the likes of Farniok and McGovern and stuff like that. Like, for the 8 reps that McGovern played in the Tampa Bay game, I thought he actually looked really quite good. He had a terrible preseason, as did Farniok, but I thought up to that point of that injury, I thought he looked okay. And for Farniok to come in the short space of time, I thought he's actually done a really decent job. People might think, he's still the weakest link. You're probably right, but the matter of fact is, you're seeing that continuity grow week after week now, like compared to the Bucs game, compared to the Bengals game. So when it comes to Jason Peters, like, I'm kind of in agreement. It's like, if he was to go in, then it would be left tackle, then put Smith back into left guard, but I'm in no rush to do that.
Howman, how much merit? Because there's obviously some, but how much merit is there to the idea of, look, the plan was Tyler Smith at left guard, like Tony said. The plan was not for Connor McGovern to be a starter on this team. The plan was not for Matt Farniok to be a starter on this team. Get back to the plan. You theoretically spent several months in the war room at the Star putting together this plan. Why are you going to throw it away based off of 2 weeks worth of legitimate play that we'll all recognize? I mean, is that fair, Howman? Or should the Cowboys ride the hot hand, so to speak, here with Tyler Smith at left tackle?
Well, I think that I think there's definitely value in being able to say things haven't gone how we planned, and so we'll change our plan. I think there's value in having a coaching staff and front office that knows when to deviate from what you planned. But I would actually disagree with the sentiment that things have been going well so far.
Oh, what a left turn. Let's go.
I mean, the offensive line, don't get me wrong, has looked great in run blocking. They have looked pretty bad, in my view, in pass blocking, mostly coming from the left side. Through 2 games, Matt Farniok has allowed 12 pressures. That's more than the rest of this offensive line combined. He's great in run blocking. He actually ranks number 2 among all guards in run block win rate. He is a liability in pass protection so far. And I don't really want to, rag on him too much because he was primarily playing center all off season, and he really didn't get much play at the guard spots and wasn't really expecting to come in and play until he did last Sunday. But he is not someone that should be part of your plan to be starting at left guard on a regular basis. As for Tyler Smith, he has looked good. He's looked better than I thought he would playing left tackle because he had a lot of weaknesses coming out of college at left tackle. I thought he was a more natural fit at left guard. But he has not, in my opinion, he's not looked good enough to outplay Jason Peters when he gets ready to play. In at least once in both games, he's had miscues where he hasn't gotten the right guy and he's let a free rusher get to the quarterback. He's had issues of getting all the way out there when the rusher takes a more angled approach to the quarterback. And those were things that we saw that he struggled with in college, which is why they wanted to put him in at left guard first, let him kind of mature his game. So I think when Jason Peters is ready, you put him out there. We saw last year when he played with the Bears, he still has it. He can still perform at a solid level. You put Tyler Smith back at left guard, and then whatever, with Connor McGovern, whenever he comes back, you kind of see where the rest of the offensive line is. But I think that's going to be by far their best route going forward.
Danny, I'll come back to you to finish this off because it's kind of these three dudes, Mark, Tony, and Howman, all of the mindset that Jason Peters should play left tackle. Paul was nodding strongly in agreement with you when you were making your case, but Paul kind of gave half a point to the other side. So it's kind of you and half of Paul versus three guys in the other half of Paul. So Danny, you're the only one who's like completely convicted in the fact that Jason Peters should kind of ride the bench. Have any of these guys changed your mind?
No, it actually just makes me feel stronger.
Job, guys.
I think here, I want to point out a couple things. I want to say that we're talking about what we know and and what we've seen, but let's also entertain. First off, Tony made a good point as far as let's see what else. How maybe things could be better, and I think that's fine. But here's the situation: is things could be worse. So we assume Jason Peters will be okay, and we're talking about how he's solid, as Howman said, and I think. He's solid, but he's actually not as good as he was, and you can start to see that he's a liability at times. So what if Jason Peters is not very good? So we get worse there. What if Tyler Smith actually plays like Tyler Smith preseason left guard? What if he's holding, and what if he's struggling too? So there's some element of unknowns that we know that actually could be worse. But here's the biggest reason why I don't want to mess with it is. You take Tyler Smith out of left tackle. This guy is getting better with each rep. I mean, he could end up reaching towards borderline Pro Bowl level towards the end of the year. I mean, if he keeps going, do not take that away from him. I mean, he's our future left tackle. We know Tyron Smith is, his shelf life is almost up. So don't mess with that. I mean, I think there is something we could lose by messing with this, and that's Tyler Smith's development plus also inferior play by both of those guys at those positions. And this would be a different question if we had Farniok the whole year. I'm talking about one more game to get through with McGovern's coming back. So that's why I'm firmly set on just keeping Peters at the swing.
I'm going to ask a question that I didn't have written down, but I'm just going to throw it out at this point. I mean, it's a question I think about every day. Why are Josh Ball and Matt Waletzko on this roster? Like why? Like we're sitting here talking about all these combat, and like I'm not trying to be rude, but like we're stretching ourselves. Like do this, play this guy. Well, like the dudes who this team designated as the swing tackle options are not in any of our considerations for any of these opportunities, any of these jobs. Like what are they serving on this roster, Mark?
They're for the future. They're to give you options for Terrence Steele, whether or not you want to give him a contract extension or not.
Tony, I mean, again, I'm not saying like, oh, they suck, cut them, like banish them, to Neptune. But like, what again, like how is that not the biggest indictment of the thinking behind this group not necessarily being infallible?
Yeah, I mean, it's very clear how this offensive line views their depth. We know that Matt Farniok, if Connor McGovern's going to end up being the starter, he's the starting left guard. We know that Farniok is that swing guard that's got the position flex inside, and they view Tyler Smith as the backup left tackle, has to be the starter. So now in Dan's situation, Jason Peters is that guy. So where does Farniok, where does Ball and Let's Go fit in this situation? I think Bledsoe is trying to grind it out with his shoulder. I think he could have season-ending shoulder surgery if he ever decided to at any point in time. So yeah, I think Mark is right on point there when he says it's going to be it's about the future. It's not about right now. They've made a ton of moves to let us know they're thinking about the future, and these are just two more of those.
Danny, on Monday, John Ridgway was claimed by the Washington Commanders. Kevin suggested the Cowboys should have cut Ball and kept John Ridgway. Do you agree with that assessment?
Nope. No, I think here's the thing. I think Ball and Let's Go. This is their first action they saw. Ball didn't play last year, and Let's Go is a rookie. But I think that Ball was pretty disappointing. But Let's Go actually showed some promise, and I think that it's nice to kind of keep these guys, on the shelf and you let them develop. This is what you hope to happen with these
that
guys.
wasn't the plan, though. The plan wasn't, these will be development years for these. Maybe it was for Let's Go, but the plan was Josh Ball is going to be the swing tackle. And now the dude they brought in as an emergency is somebody that people don't even want to start, and Jason Peters.
That's what you thought the plan was. That's what I thought the plan was. It's not the plan. Tyler Smith was the one. He was always the backup plan.
If Tyler Smith was the plan, then why did he get no work at left tackle throughout camp up until not all of this can be true. It just can't be. Like, there has to have been a failure in the plan at some way along the path.
I agree. I mean, I think I agree with you until I think, and Tony touched on this, and also Brian Broaddus touched on this too, is they wanted him to work inside, work on his hands, because that's where the contact comes the quickest, and that's where he had the problems with the hands. And I think that they developed it with the hands, and then they're confident that he can play the tackle position. And honestly, those things that are said actually have come true. So I'm not so sure their plan was bad. I mean, because these things are actually working out. So I don't know. I'm not critical of this. I think Let's Go might be a nice swing tackle in the future for next year. I mean, give him some time. Josh Ball, we don't know. I mean, as far as Ridgway, he didn't do anything. I don't miss him at all. He wasn't on my roster, and I think that he just needs more work and more development. So I mean, I'd rather have the tackle guys than Ridgway. So no, I don't have a problem with this move.
Okay, I knew that would be controversial, but not as controversial as the next question. Tony, we're going to start with you. On a scale of 1 to 10, how scared are you of the Philadelphia Eagles?
I think there's a healthy amount of respect. I mean, I think there
is no respect. There's no. The one word that we will not allow here.
I've said that before. I said with all due disrespect about the Eagles. I'm very clear about that. But understanding that they're a quality football team, I'm not hyping them like everybody else is. This is everybody's darling. If you put on any of the 4-letter networks today, it's like Buffalo Bills and the Eagles in the Super Bowl. It's like, what made you say that? Because they both played last night. So it's just like, I think we need to pump the brakes. I think Minnesota is not as good as everybody thinks they are. We already know how Kirk Cousins is in prime time. He's terrible, so I think I see more now. I see more of what the Eagles look like against the Lions than what I saw from Minnesota. I think the Lions were able to put 35 points on them. They were able to give them a dogfight in that first week one. Nothing Minnesota did on defense was really of a challenge to the Eagles, and they have enough talent to make you pay when you don't scheme and prepare well enough. So I think it was more of an indictment on Minnesota last night. So if I had to put a number on it, I would say 6. I think the Eagles are competitive. I think they can really give us a run for our money, especially with the current situation we're in. But I'm pumping the brakes on the Eagles, and I'm not as high on them as everybody else is.
Mark.
7, because you have to look at what incarnation of the Eagles is out there right now, because really every NFL team will have 3 or 4 different versions that they'll show throughout the course of the season. And maybe what shows up on October 16th at Lincoln Financial Field on Sunday Night Football is entirely different than what we have seen through the first 2 weeks. But I think this incarnation of the Eagles is, a 7 out of 10 on the anxiety scale. But I know that Dan Quinn, if he has his entire arsenal available, will have the best plan that anyone else has ever seen when it comes to frustrating Jalen Hurts. And he'll bring him down to Cooper Rush's level or to a broke thumb Dak Prescott's level. And at that point, it'll be a dogfight. So I think 7 out of 10, it was always the Eagles that were going to challenge the Cowboys. I think the Giants are more like how the Panthers were last year with their 2-0 start. So I think the Eagles are a 7 out of 10. But like I said, with the caveat, out of this incarnation right now, what shows up October 16th might be different.
Paul, I'll phrase the question a little bit differently for you. And I'll change it for Danny and Howman because that's how I want to do this. What NFC team scares you more than the Eagles currently?
Probably the Cardinals, I think.
The Cardinals? Okay. Okay, Paul.
Yeah, just on their offense.
I don't know if that's more complimentary to the Cardinals or mean to the Eagles. But go ahead.
I mean, I don't know. I'm probably just naming ball just for the sake of it, to be perfectly honest. But I don't really actually generally see anyone really proper stands out so far. I mean, we're only into really week 2 right now, so it's really hard to kind of say. But do you mind if I can give my scoreline?
Of course.
So I'm going to break it into 2, one for offense and one for defense. So there's my creativity on this. So I'm random.
So you're calling out Mark and Tony for not being creative. I like this. Okay, go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, absolutely. So 4 for the Eagles offense, because I think our defense is just going to be like Mark was saying about our defense. If Dan Quinn gets all his guys, I think that would be the main weapon pretty much. So I'm giving the offense a 4, but in terms of their defense, and this is purely because of their defensive line and of how they've stacked that up in the front. Well, the defensive front 7 essentially. I'm giving them a 7.
Okay, that was really unique, especially the Cardinals angle. I didn't see that coming. Howman, both questions to you. What NFC teams do you view as more scary than the Eagles, if any? And you don't have to go offense, defense if you want, but on 1 to 10 scale, how scared are you of the Eagles?
Well, which NFC teams I'm more scared of? Almost all of them. I really don't think that the Eagles are actually that scary. I was going to say my number scale of 1 to 10, I was going to go with Jalen Hurts number 1. I mean, last year, the Eagles made the playoffs because they were a team that played a lot of bad teams, beat bad teams, and then lost to good teams. And this year they have another really easy schedule. So I think they're making the playoffs. I think they're going to end up with a pretty respectable record. But they're also going to go most of the year without having played any real teams. And when they get to the playoffs, I think they're going to be one and done again. I think they're going to go up against a team that actually has talent, actually has skill, and they're going to get a bounce. Jalen Hurts has shown improvement in these first 2 games over last year. But the offense, I still don't think that this is an offense that can go up against some of the elite defenses in this game and actually succeed. We'll see how it comes when they go against the Cowboys, who look to have another really good defense. We'll see how it comes when they actually get the playoffs and have to play against the big boy teams. But I don't think that they're a team that's going to be a legitimate threat. I don't think that they're going to I don't think that they're shifting the power balance of NFC East right now. They're lucky enough to have a pretty easy schedule.
Okay, Danny, I'm amending the question just a bit for you. In case you're unaware, Dan, DraftKings Sportsbook, our friends over at the SB Nation NFL show, they have the Eagles as 6.5-point favorites over the Commanders this week. I'm going to roll through their schedule, and I would like you to tell me when to stop. And what you're trying to find is the game you believe the Eagles will be underdogs in. It's the game they won't be favored in. Again, they're favored by 6.5 right now against Washington. So next week, they've got the Jaguars. I think we both think that they're going to be favorites in that game as well. The week after that, they're at Arizona. We know Paul's answer, but Dan, do you think the Eagles or Cardinals will be favored in that matchup? Again, we're talking about favorite, not who you think is going to win.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to be dogs until we get to Green Bay.
Okay, so then
cut to the chase.
Okay, so but that puts them through at Arizona, Dallas. You're saying the Cowboys will be underdogs. Then they're on their bye. They get the Steelers at home, the Steagles matchup. I don't know if you guys know, they used to be one team long time ago, 100 years ago. Anyway, and then after that, at Houston, Washington, at Indianapolis, Green Bay. You're saying they go all the way until week 12 without being underdogs.
I do.
That's the mark of a good team. Like, we can sit here and say like they're not, but like you have to give them some credit in that sense. No offense, Howman, giving them absolutely none. But Danny, go ahead.
No, you do. And I think, I'm surprised that you guys are still not coming around to this team. I love
this roundtable. I'm sorry, Danny. Go ahead.
Thing is, I already have been worried about the Eagles. They started at a 7 for me, and if you follow me on Twitter, I predicted them to win the East. And so here's the thing: they've had a really good offseason, and you have to give the Eagles organization credit. I mean, with the trade for AJ Brown and the other trades for Johnson, and they bring in really key free agents with Hassan Reddick, and they got James Bradbury, and a great draft with Jordan Davis and Kobe Dean. And so I really think you just go down the list, and they have done a really good job improving their roster. So the biggest issue with the Eagles for me, and why they were only 7, is because Jalen Hurts is a wild card to me. He's always been the wild card. However, I'm starting to think that this could be bad because he's starting to play well. So the Eagles have moved up to an 8 for me. That's how concerned I am. I mean, if Jalen Hurts starts playing well with the weapons that the Eagles now have, like Devontae Smith, the list goes on. So this is a legitimate team. I mean, we should be worried. I think it's going to be a problem for the Cowboys to repeat as champions, and we will once again not have a repeat division winner in the East. So I'm very worried about Philadelphia.
Okay. Tony, you went first, and you had a lot of reactions to what everybody had to say. Who changed your mind the most, or rather, who made you think the most of everybody's answer here?
I always, me and Dan, we butt heads a little bit sometimes with some takes, but Dan always comes with.
Dan, Tony said that you say stupid stuff that he disagrees with. His exact words.
You cut me off before I was going to say. Dan comes with a lot of, reason when he doesn't just say things to say things. But ultimately, I just think that the Eagles, they did do a lot of good things, but I think what Dan kind of touched on, I feel a little different about the quarterback situation. Listen, he played good last night. I'm not gonna say he didn't, but I still need to see more from Jalen Hurts. I mean, that's where it's gonna come down to. Yes, AJ Brown's good, Devonta Smith is good. They have some weapons. Like, the offensive line seems to be somewhat strong. So my thing is, it's gonna come down to that quarterback, and I just ultimately don't believe in him yet.
Tony, I want to interrupt you, and we'll go around here. Who have you seen more from since the Cowboys won at New England? Jalen Hurts or Dak Prescott? Since that day, we're talking about 10-ish months ago. Who have you seen more from? Jalen Hurts? And I'm not saying Jalen Hurts is better than Dak Prescott, but you're saying I need to see more from him. Well, you need to see more from Dak. It's been a long time. So go ahead, Tony. Who have we seen more from since the walk-off touchdown to CeeDee Lamb against the Patriots?
But the reason why everybody puts that as the turning point is because of the injury.
Yeah, but still, we didn't. The sample size this season is incredibly small, but we didn't see it against the Bucs.
The problem is the Buccaneers defense might be one of the best defenses in the league, if not, right? So week 1, I was already of the mind that they were going to struggle regardless. And that's exactly what they did. Now, you saw with Cooper Rush, he stalled out a little bit, but he was able to win a football game. I wonder if the Cowboys had their full allotment, how different that game would have looked. It probably, we wouldn't have been Team 40 Burger. The offense would have looked a lot better. And it's just how it goes. Jalen Hurts he's developed, right? But is he at that point where I'm going to put the Eagle as the NFC favorite? I don't think I am. I still respect the Buccaneers more. I think the Rams are going to get it done if they have to. The Cardinals are not in my section. Sorry, Paul. But ultimately, I think the Eagles are in that 3 to 4 teams that you could say have a chance. But there are teams I would put over them.
Mark, do you think, and I'm not accusing anybody here of doing this, but do you think some Cowboys fans are willing to give Dak a pass or overlook certain things when it comes to Dak that they're not willing to do with Jalen Hurts, right? I need Jalen Hurts to prove it. I need Jalen Hurts to show me week to week he's a consistent passer in the NFL when we haven't seen that from this team's quarterback in almost a full year.
Yes, because naturally, like anything, I think it's really a case of please tell me that Jalen Hurts isn't. And I think that's why that goes on. Because no one wants to acknowledge that there's another legitimate starting quarterback in the division because, quite frankly, there hasn't been one. I would say throughout the entire Dak Prescott era, Eli Manning,
Well,
he
you could
was a
argue
ghost of
Kirk
himself.
at the beginning in
Yeah,
Washington.
he was a ghost of himself. Then Carson Wentz never was, except for 2017. Other than that, he really wasn't. And then Washington, I mean, Kirk Cousins, you talk about, would you marry Jason Peters? I mean, Washington dated Kirk Cousins twice and they couldn't put a ring on it. So really, I think that's it, is Dak Prescott has always been the man that has represented the NFC East, way Aaron Rodgers has represented the NFC North. And so it's just a little anxiety inducing to think that Dak has to battle for that title with an Eagles quarterback, no less.
Do we believe that though? Like, do we believe that Jalen Hurts is the best quarterback in this division? Because I don't. Like, I don't think it's that close.
Is he the best non-Dak quarterback? Yes.
Yeah, he's number 2, but I think
that's the
comfortably
question.
number 2.
That's what we're asking here. Like, obviously, we're all incredibly slanted. Like,
if you asked anybody but Eagles fans, I think they would agree that Dak Prescott's the best quarterback in the division.
I think they would have agreed prior to the last 2 weeks. I think the last 2 weeks have people thinking and contemplating.
Well, the Eagles are the flavor of the month. That everybody's darling right now.
I think the Eagles are a popular Twitter team. I agree with you, Tony. But Howman, I'm curious because Howman, you're deep in football Twitter as well. The take has been the Eagles are limited by Jalen Hurts. The Eagles are limited by Jalen Hurts as a passer. You put Dak Prescott on the Eagles, that's a Super Bowl team, right? We're seeing, at least in an incredibly small sample size, admittedly, but we're seeing the necessary things, right? Like Jalen Hurts is doing what is seemingly the necessary thing to evolve that team as a whole. Is that not at least objectively true, Howman?
Well, he's looked good through these first 2 games, but I would question how much stock you can actually put in that. Not because it's just 2 games, but because he's gone up against 2 pretty bad teams. I mean, the Lions last year had the second worst record in the entire NFL. And a lot of that was because their defense was pretty bad. That's one of the reasons they took Aiden Hutchinson was the second overall pick. They needed to beef up that defense. And they had some moments of looking good in both of their games so far this season, but they're definitely not there. And then watching the Vikings last night, I mean, the Vikings defense the last 2 years has been really, really bad. And that's what ultimately cost Mike Zimmer his job, was because he was the defensive guy. He was supposed to, at least, even if they weren't good, their defense was supposed to be elite. And for a long time it was. And then the last 2 years, it just all fell apart. And the defense, it's very clear, has not fixed themselves since they got the new head coach in. Every single throw Hurts was making last night was wide open guys. There was nobody challenging the receivers. So I'm not saying that Hurts hasn't shown that improvement or that it's not legitimate. But, the way I look at it, he's looked good against 2 teams that were really bad last year and so far haven't looked to make any significant improvements.
Paul, is this the closest that any NFC East quarterback has ever been to Dak Prescott and what we're seeing in Jalen Hurts?
Unfortunately, I would say so. I mean, everyone's made a really good point. Like, you could say, yeah, he is probably the best quarterback outside of that right now. But, yeah.
Danny, your thoughts on all of this? I mean, because you were higher on the Eagles and everybody. Do you feel like this was just another round of a bunch of Cowboys fans trying to lie to themselves, or some of this fair?
A little bit of both. I mean, Howman makes good points about. I mean, there is a little bit of TBD that would still
Mark,
needs to happen.
Tony, Paul, no good points from you guys.
But I want to say this, and I don't pander to the hosts very much. I mean, but I want to give you props when to deserve it. And I think you really pointed on something really important. I think this division is going to be won by the quarterback that plays better. And I know that Cowboy fans do not want to hear this, but unless Dak Prescott returns to being Dak Prescott, Jalen Hurts, Eagles are gonna reign in the East. So, I mean, I don't think that Hurts is a better quarterback than Prescott, but I do think he's a better quarterback than him right now. And Dak,
and he's more well set up than Dak as far as the team around him. He doesn't have to be better than Dak to be better than Dak, so to speak.
Dak is hurt right now too.
That he is hurt, but he's been hurt, and we need Dak back, and we haven't seen that in a while. It's been a while. And I worry about that. And now we're going to, not only when Prescott comes back, we got to worry now, how's his grip strength? What's he going to trust his? And I feel like his psyche, if you look at just the way he even played, healthy in week 1, he was just almost like a rookie again. He was he was just so indecisive. And so it's worrisome to me because I don't know what's going on with Prescott. And I feel like until he gets back to what we're used to seeing, or like he was early last year, it's going to make things a little bit worrisome for Cowboys because, I mean, without that, the offense is going to go not as far as we hope, and that's going to be a problem. So I think, I mentioned that Hurts is the wild card. Dak Prescott is now the wild card for the Dallas Cowboys, and I'm hoping that he returns, but I'm not fully convinced that's what's going to happen.
Maybe it's an oversimplification for me to say this, but last year the Cowboys with CeeDee Lamb, Amari Cooper, and Michael Gallup, and a somewhat okay offensive line was able to produce 12 wins and look good off and put up some statistical numbers. Now this year, you got Dennis Houston and no Brownie thrown too with CeeDee Lamb within,
Not anymore.
Right. Exactly. One of the three main guys that was supposed to be Dak's guy didn't even make it past week 2 on this roster.
Yeah,
so
we can't blame that, Tony, because look at what Cooper Rush did. I mean, Cooper, he just played solid, and it was he moved the ball and he scored touchdowns. I mean, just solid.
Okay, now, like Tony Pollard took a pass 46 yards. Like that's not Cooper Rush.
Cooper Rush played better than Dak. Nobody's just going to debate that, right? I mean,
but look at the opponent. I mean, if Cooper Rush against Tampa Bay, what do you think that would look like? Now, and my kind of wrap the whole point into this is, Jalen Hurts looks good because their offensive line is good and because they brought A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith is in year 2. The weapons around him. So it's like, it's all about the quarterback. But why, when we talk about why these guys look good, it's always about the cast around them.
I think
it's always about the cast around them.
This is my take, and I think this summarizes kind of everybody's point. I think we all agree that Dak Prescott is a better quarterback than Jalen Hurts. But I think we've reached a point where that isn't the only thing that matters anymore, given the way that Philadelphia has built their roster and given the way that Dallas, unfortunately, tore down their roster a little bit. So, like, if we go back to the 1 to 10 thing, Jalen Hurts is maybe a 6 out of 10. Dak might be an 8 out of 10. But Dak has to play to a 10 out of 10 level to mitigate for the losses around him that Jalen Hurts doesn't have. So Jalen Hurts playing at a 6 out of 10 level may produce more than Dak playing at a 9 out of 10 level simply because of what's around him. That's why we're all so frustrated. That's why we're also mad at this Cowboys team. Kudos to them that they partly lucked and partly earned a win against the Cincinnati Bengals, but they have set Dak up to have to be all the much more greater than Jalen Hurts, which is difficult in general, more difficult given the injury that you pointed out, Howman, and even more difficult given the fact that the players who he has to rely on are CeeDee Lamb, who has never been a true alpha number 1 wide receiver, and Michael Gallup, who we haven't seen come back from an injury either. There are just too many ifs that this is predicated on. They could all hit, but it is a very, very difficult thing to see happening in most likelihoods. That's my take, at least.
What if I have the defense drag Hurts down to Dak's level, though, and then beat him in a fist fight? And
that's possible.
That's the strategy that they have built this entire roster around, is the defense basically being like the Showtime Lakers, just hitting everybody and turning that into bringing the opposing quarterbacks down to the Cowboys level.
Kevin has offered you 5 points, Mark. So congratulations to you. All right. Last thing, Tony jumped the gun about Dennis Houston, who was waived on Tuesday. No real explanation from the Cowboys. We won't hear from them because they play on Monday Night Football, so we'll start to get the week started on Thursday. The speculation from many people is that this is because the Cowboys feel that either Michael Gallup is in fact ready to roll, or that Jalen Tolbert is now all of a sudden suited to be active on an NFL team that took him in the 3rd round just a few months ago. Howman, what is your estimation as to why Dennis Houston was waived? And what do you make of this happening, given all of the pomp and circumstance that Dallas had surrounding him?
Well, I think that, simply put, through 2 games, he has not produced. They've thrown to him a number of times, and he hasn't been able to get open. He hasn't been able to catch the ball. And I think that Michael Gallup is probably nearing a return. There's been whispers in the Twitterverse that he might actually come back and play Monday, but that he'll be on a pitch count. But I also think that something that Bobby Belt tweeted was that this is more about wanting to see more from Simi Fehoko, that he gives them more value on special teams. They want to see what he can do on offense. He had a pretty good training camp and preseason, and I've been a fan of him since they drafted him. I'm excited to see what he can do, but also Michael Gallup is, even if he doesn't play this week, he's getting closer every week James Washington is soon going to be in the window to where he could start to return as well. And then Noah Brown just had a big game too. So I think that this is mostly a case of guys are getting ready to come back. They want to see more from Fehoko, and Houston just hasn't actually done anything when he's had the opportunity in the regular season.
Paul, are you sad that Dennis Houston was waived?
Nah, not at all.
Wow. Jeez, Paul. He has a family.
Football's a business, so it really is. It's a dog world. So you take care of the scraps and bring in something that's better. So
wow. You know what, Paul? I respect a man who's honest. Samuel, though, says Dennis Houston is prime Jerry Rice. So the Cowboys clearly making a huge mistake. Mark, do you think the Cowboys will tell us what this means by way of an appearance on 105 to the Fan at some point before Monday night's game?
Oh, yeah, of course. But I think that basically they waived him because they're going to bring Houston back to the practice squad so that he's eligible to practice throughout the week leading up to the Giants. This also allows them to use him as a standard elevation for the game day roster, so they can still use him. They've still got 2 of those remaining, or they could sign him to the active roster, but I don't know that they'll do that. They still have Dennis Houston, so this is more of a procedural thing. I don't think that this is and Dennis Houston, happy trails, goes and became a CFL All-Star. But it really is, why did they do this? Is it because, for Simi Fehoko, it doesn't mean Michael Gallup comes back, or does it mean that they're going to give Jalen Tolbert a chance? Because Stephen Jones said on the Fan on Monday that Tolbert was working through some hamstring issues, and that compromised his ability to get ready to go for the season. I don't know that they'll just throw Tolbert out there against the Giants. So it may mean Fehoko or Gallup.
So, Danny, many people have said over the last 2 weeks with Jalen Tolbert being inactive, the take has generally been some version of, well, if he can't be active when Michael Gallup's not there and when James Washington's not there, what's going to happen when they're back? It's going to be all the more difficult for Jalen Tolbert to get on the field. So to Mark's point, the Dennis Houston thing could be just procedural. He could still play for them on Monday night against the Giants. There's still all the opportunity in the world for that to happen. But say he doesn't. Say he doesn't. And what if Jalen Tolbert is still inactive? At what point do we start I know there's questions about Dennis Houston, but at what point are we starting to actually legitimately panic about Jalen Tolbert being inactive throughout maybe the entire year that is his rookie season?
I don't know at what point, RJ, would be the time. I'm not going to panic. I mean, he's a rookie, and there could be some things going on that we don't know about. I do think that this is a numbers game, and with Gallup's condition and with Tolbert's situation, either one of those guys could be coming back real soon. Dennis Houston wasn't a difference maker. John Ridgeway, Dennis Houston, and Nashawn Wright were the 3 guys that I left off of my 53-man roster, and that's 2 out of 3. So I'm hoping for the hat trick, But so I'm not too worried about Houston being gone, and I'm also just not. I'm not going to read too much into it too and think that it has some other meaning. So to me, it's kind of just a non-issue. I'm hoping that it means that one of our other receivers are closer, particularly Michael Gallup, closer to returning. And who knows, when Jalen Tolbert gets out there, we may have a different feel about the kind of player he is, come week 9.
Tony, are you at all panicked? Are you at all curious? Are you at all mad or upset? How do you feel?
I guess I'm a little curious because they mentioned Simi Fehoko as a reason why Dennis Houston gets cut. But if you look at the way the snap count broke down, Dennis Houston's the first one out there before Simi Fehoko. Week 1, Simi Fehoko didn't even come in the game until Cooper Rush did. So it's just fascinating to me that they're, we want to see what Simi Fehoko, what was Simi Fehoko not available? You had him there, you could have played him, but Dennis Houston's the one in the huddle. So I understand Simi Fehoko is the type of dude that you obviously don't cut. He's got traits and they believe that he has a chance to be good, but it's just the way they used the two of them just didn't make sense. Like, I understand if Mark says this is a procedural move and he ends up back on the Cowboys practice squad. I get it, but don't tell me or say here like, oh, this move is because we want Simi Fehoko to get another chance, because Simi was right there in uniform himself the whole time.
They're peeing on your leg and telling you it's raining, Tony Catalina. Okay, last question, round the horn, and then it's time to hand out a winner. Ryan brings this up. No one has addressed the Dalton Schultz issue. Will Ferguson take over this week? This is kind of like a not big deal that would normally be a big deal, I feel like. One of the Cowboys' top offensive starters is potentially not going to play. We'll go clockwise order. Tony Catalina, 1 to 10, with 10 being holy crap, smash the glass, press the panic button, 1 being on a beach, sipping Mai Tais, toes in the sand. How are you feeling about Dalton Schultz potentially not playing on Monday night?
I think if this was any other year but this year, I'd have a little bit more of a be a little more chill about it. But right now, Dalton Schultz is one of our biggest like pass catching weapons. So him missing a game is, I'm 5 or 6, I guess, because I'm interested what Jake Ferguson can do. But outside of CeeDee Lamb, Dalton Schultz was like the number 2. So it's a little concerning.
Paul, 1 to 10, how much are you freaking out on Dalton Schultz?
About 6.5, 6.5.
Okay. So it's a little bit more. I didn't
bit more.
I didn't know
Just a
decimals
little bit.
were an option. All right.
I'm making it happen.
You know what, Paul? You've been creative, if anything, here on tonight's roundtable. Danny, 1 to 10.
I'm at a 3. I mean, for starters, I'm not really worried about Schultz. I think he'll be back sooner than we think. And so also, I was very impressed with Ferguson. And also, we got a guy in the practice squad, Sean McKeon, that is a good inline blocker. So I think they're going to be fine. I'm not really worried about this at all.
All of this made your Eagles take so fascinating, Danny. Like, I feel like you were on opposite sides of so many things. That was such a great left turn. This is a fun roundtable. Howman, 1 to 10.
I'm at a 10. I think I'll modify it. I'll say I'm at a 10 if he actually misses time. Dalton Schultz, I've been a big Dalton Schultz fan, and I think he is just so crucial to this offense, the way that it runs, especially this year with their increase in use of 12 personnel. I like Jake Ferguson. He's looked good, but he hasn't caught a pass in 2 games. And Peyton Hendershot also hasn't. Neither of them have been thrown to. Going back to the last question about Houston, why they would do this now, I think, if anything, it's so that they can have a roster spot to call Sean McEwen up, because they might be light on tight ends this week. But even then, Sean McEwen has not really been much of a pass catcher in his time with Dallas to this point. So you're talking about someone who was a huge part of this passing game last year, and of guys that actually returned to this team, he's your second best receiving target after CeeDee Lamb. Not having him against the 2-0 Giants would be a problem, and especially if he's out longer than that.
Mark, good luck topping a 10.
Yeah, 5 out of 10. Because the Giants, although they are the top 3 blitzing team in the NFL, they've only generated 3 sacks to this point. Their yards per carry surrendered, I think, is about 4.9. So they may not need Dalton Schultz as much, but you have to remember that Jerry referred to this as a short-term injury, and so his availability for the Giants is in question. It's a Monday night game, so you have an extra day to evaluate Dalton Schultz, and I think he'll be a game flight decision. I think on Sunday, when the team plane leaves, I think he's going to be declared questionable on Friday or Saturday when the final injury report comes out. But he's going to be a game flight decision, and they may leave him in Dallas on Sunday. So I think they'll play it down to the wire. And like I said, 5 out of 10.
That's a good prediction. All right, boys. The time has come. Now, I do want to check in. Tony, you have won a roundtable before, correct? Paul, you have won a roundtable before. Mark, you have won a roundtable before. Howman, you have definitely won a roundtable before. I promise this wasn't just as a result of that. Tonight's roundtable winner, Danny Phantom. We have a crew of 100% winners here tonight. The final tally, last place was a tie between Mark and Paul. 29 points apiece. Good job, guys. Still, hey, you can't win them all. Howman and Tony, you tied for second at 30 points apiece, and that was with the help from the crowd. Danny, 31. You just edged it out by the hair on your chinny chin chin. I gave you points for that, for being on an island. You were unafraid to kind of stand your ground by yourself tonight. Although that was kind of true for all of you at different points in time. But Danny, your thoughts, how are you feeling as the latest Roundtable winner?
Well, I'm very, very grateful because I feel like I'm on an island a lot. And I'm glad
Survivor starts tomorrow, Dan, by the way.
Survivor starts tomorrow. Yeah. Congrats to Danny McRae, by the way.
That's right. Look at the synchronization here. But go ahead.
But no, it's great. It's you guys were making great points, and it was tough to really come out ahead of all of you guys. All five.
Who made the worst point, and what was it?
Oh, I'm not going to do that. But no, I feel great. Thank you. I now I'm one of you guys. And thanks for not punishing me for disagreeing with everybody. So,
Howman, Johnny Boy would like to know that, with the exception of the Kellen Moore comment at the beginning of the show, that he thinks you were robbed. Tony, your thoughts on being a part of a crew, like literally all of you. Has the Roundtable winners room become less special now that everybody's in it?
I think it just got another worthy opponent, another member to the club. So it's a good group to be a part of.
Okay. Well, Tony, it is time to go. And I will tell you, look, Ron the Don said, "Well done, Dan. Now, Tony, rap." Look, again, Tony, I say this all the time. I am a man of the people. I am merely the commenter's puppet. I am attached to their strings. So I dance as they say. They want you to rap. So send us home with a rap, Tony. It can be a poem with a little bit of a beat. You can do this. We believe
I got nothing. I'm telling you.
You can do it, Tony. Come on. We all believe.
Man, I'm not B-Rabbit. I don't got it in me.
Tony, just give us anything that rhymes. Well, the bar is low. You're Brett Maher here. Just make an extra point.
One fish, two fish. Red fish, blue fish.